raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
We have been given a gift by God today to usher in a new dynasty.
Now you get RFK Jr.
Don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again?
You get Tulsi Gabbard.
Putting our country in a continual state of war.
You get Elon Musk and you get J.D. Vance.
A hell of a way to start the next 4 years.
The right-wing Avengers.
We have an army of digital soldiers.
Department of Defense under Donald Trump will achieve peace through strength.
Shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one.
A rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
The golden age of America has most definitely begun.
Begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay.
They're getting the dirtbags off these streets.
There's one guy who can fix this shit, and it's Donald Trump.
What's storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Thunder rolls, the fire's in the sky. We've been waiting for this moment all our lives. The darkness gathers, the evil takes its form, but side by side we ride into the storm. They thought they could blind us. into the storm, into the storm. Together we ride into the
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh. Welcome to the Red Pill Project Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Friday. I hope everybody is doing well out there. Sorry about last night. We had DEF CON. It was a great show. My son's like, hey, I got a band concert today. I'm like, well, shit, I better get going to that. So I had my son's band concert last night. It was cool. He plays saxophone. I play guitar. He plays saxophone, but he's pretty damn good too. But man, interesting day. Trump in China. Trump in China. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's happening in China right now. Why is Trump in China with 18 massive CEOs of the top companies in the world with a net worth of over like $23 trillion? Why? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. We have Kevin Warsh confirmed the 17th chairman of the Federal Reserve today. 17th chairman of the Federal Reserve today. So lots of things happening, and we're starting to see the foundation being built for everything that is about to flood, right? We're in the midst of drip, 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 drip right now. And we're seeing little inklings of things that are happening, but we really don't know what the big thing is behind the scenes, but that is coming. And yeah, we're going to go over that as well. 2020 election fraud. We got state level fraud. The question is there going to be accountability? Are people going to be held responsible for this criminality, for this treason? And I think that, yeah, it's an absolute yes. Trump has nothing to lose. Trump is going to absolutely take it to them and ensure that whoever his attorney general is does it. And I think it's going to be Todd Blanche. I honestly do. This week, so we've been alternating kind of, well, the last few weeks we've done the Q&As, the live Q&As on Wednesday nights. And so this week we're going to do it on Friday night because there's two different audiences, right? So on Friday night, and potentially might have someone join with me. We'll see. He mentioned it last week, so I want to give him the opportunity. But Friday night will be the live Q&A after this show. And if Fringe is on, it'll be after Fringe. But either way, the live Q&A will be Friday night. This Friday, that's live Q&A with myself. It's on Zoom. How do you get in? Well, you just got to be a premium member. And all you do is you head over to Red Pills TV right there, scrolling on the screen, redpills.tv. You go to the premium tab, and then you see all the platforms. Now, if you're on YouTube, Substack, if you're on Social Red Pill, if you're on X, if you're on Locals, well, then all you have to do is just be a subscriber there. It's really easy. So if you're become a member on the YouTube channel, you'll get the private messages of the Q&As when those do happen. Anything else going on this weekend? We're bringing back the conspiracy streams. Unfortunately, we can only play them on Rumble, Rumble and D Live and Pilled. And I think sometimes we play them on X, but it depends. Some of those things do get copyright, even though they are all over the place and they're what we call public use. So, we'll be bringing back the conspiracy streams. I don't know about nightly. We have the Fringe Binge. That is for our premium subscribers on Rumble and Substack, and soon to be YouTube. But we got to figure out how to do it on YouTube for a premium stream. But the Fringe Binge, I actually found, give you guys an idea, is I used to host conversations on the Fringe, and I did that show along with the Daily Dose weekly. And I had hundreds of episodes of Conversations on the Fringe. And this goes back with myself and my brother Jason, who is my co-host, my friend Jeff, as well as our old co-host. We've done a ton of different shows. And then there's another show we did, Insomniac Hour. Well, I recently got one of my YouTube channels back, and yep, sure enough, there is some shows in there. So I've been downloading them, getting them ready to go out there. So that's pretty cool. I think that's awesome. So we'll have some new Fringe Binge shows coming up. What else do we have going on? I think that's about it. But no visitors tonight, just me and you. We got a lot of stuff to get caught up on. I got 2 days worth of news to go through. So we're going to jump right into it here in just a minute. Just wanted to say, appreciate you guys, appreciate everything that you guys do out there to support me and watching night after night and keeping the show alive. You guys are absolutely amazing. And Beard Dude was cool. Beard Dude, who's Beard Dude? Oh, Guy Plus Beard. Guy Plus Beard. If you see Barber's Life Matters, it's like his good friend. So just hit made up. I don't know if Guy Plus Beard is still doing shows. He might be. I don't know. Not with us, but all right. Today, the Senate confirmed Kevin Warsh as the 17th chairman of the Federal Reserve. And you remember what the boards say? The boards say gold shall destroy the Fed. We've had a lot of talk recently. Trump was asked about Fort Knox and does he believe the gold's in there? And I don't think he cares because he knows that there's gold under the New York Fed. And now he's got the chairman on his side in his pocket. What does that mean? It means that I think a lot of the economic change that is going to happen, that Scott Bessent has been laying the framework for, is going to happen in partnership with Kevin Warsh at the Federal Reserve. I think that what we could potentially see over the course of the next few years is a reframing, a remodeling of what the Federal Reserve actually is and how it operates. So economically, we are transitioning globally. I mean, if you just look at how the global economy is shifted in just the last 12 months, it's astronomical. But what we are about to see, I think, is an asset-based economic system. And so how does this kind of work? Well, it's theoretical in nature, but this is kind of how it works. Is the United States will create and develop what's known as a sovereign wealth fund. Within that sovereign wealth fund, it'll hold something known as the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, which will also hold various other cryptocurrencies. That will be under the power and authority of the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury, and the Secretary of Treasury. Now, within the sovereign wealth fund, what happens is you hold all the land leases. So if you remember the big, beautiful bill that came out last year, there was a massive amount of regulations that were lifted and massive licenses were issued for U.S. federal property to be mined on as well as drilled for oil. They're going to take those leases and they'll pop those into the sovereign wealth fund, which means that the revenue generated from all of the sales of U.S. minerals and oil and all of this stuff that is coming out that is being paid to the federal government will go into the sovereign wealth fund. Then you have like companies like Intel, which Trump owns 10% of because they gave it to him. You'll start to see more companies doing this in some type of strategic alignment with the Trump administration. And you'll start seeing that interest going into the sovereign wealth fund. Then you'll have the gold, and then you'll have Bitcoin and other types of cryptocurrencies. Then you'll have all different types of assets, the $174 trillion worth of assets underneath our feet flowing into the sovereign wealth fund. Now, why does that start to be pretty lucrative for the future? Well, as artificial intelligence begins to move and grow and automation comes in and starts displacing jobs, you have to ask yourself, well, what are we going to do as a society? How are we going to compensate those people? Most people would go to, well, the government has to give a universal basic income. Well, no, that's kind of universal basic income. That's kind of communist. That's kind of socialist. We're not going to go down that route. I don't want to be dependent upon the government for money coming in. Instead, what if that every one of those companies that begins to displace part of its labor force with automation, there is going to be a difference in the constructive pricing of how this operates. What do I mean by that? Is that labor costs can range anywhere from 70 to 85% of a business's expenditures. When you bring automation in, that is going to cut anywhere from 30 to 40% of those expenditures down. But also the cost of production reduces drastically. And when you start to have the automation out there, and it is mining the raw resources, it is shipping and transporting them, it is manufacturing and processing them, the cost of production drops significantly. And as that drops significantly, the cost of that labor for the automation drops significantly. So what happens? Because you still need an economic model. You need people buying and selling. Well, what begins to happen is a certain percentage of that difference goes into the U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund, paid as either a dividend to the U.S. government or percentage ownership, as we discussed before. And then those dividends are then paid out to the American citizens. This is where I believe it is all headed. And this is the framework that we've seen seeded over the course of the last year. Now, what about debt? And that's the real question. How do we get out of the cycle of debt, and how do we get out of the idea of federal taxes? Well, federal taxes is a really interesting thing, because once you establish a system of tariffs and this kind of new monetary model that is being raised up, you no longer need to survive off of the backs of people or their labor. But now you're making money through imports and exports and through various different excise taxes that come about through all of this process. But then on the other hand, what about debt? How does the federal government go out there and borrow money? Well, number one, it's going to borrow money through various different corporations, corporate structures, primarily in the crypto industry. And this will be by applying new types of bonds. The bonds, 50-year gold and 50-year Bitcoin bonds. Now, why those two assets specifically? Because they're appreciating assets. As inflation goes up, so does the price of gold. That is the ultimate hedge for the debasement of a currency. So if you have a bond being issued for 50 years at, let's say, a certain percentage interest, and that interest has an early payoff amount, and you have appreciating assets of which hold within the value of that bond, that debt gets paid off almost automatically by the appreciation of those assets. I believe that this is where we're headed economically. Well, if everything goes right, this is where we could be headed economically. And I think Kevin Warsh is one of those people that's going to help draw down the federal deficit, reduce federal spending through the borrowing of debt-based dollars through the Federal Reserve, and help to Scott Bessent structure and organize a more conducive economic model that works for the American people. At least that's my thoughts. I know that was a long little rant, but it's been like, what, 48 hours since I talked to you guys. So like, I'm like jonesing, like I got to get this out. President Trump gearing up to go full America first mode in China as he meets with Xi Jinping tonight. Remember, the Democrats opened up America to China. So Trump's going to make China open up to us. If everything is made in China, they better start buying American. Boeing planes with GE engines, our chips, not the good ones. Elon wants to sell them cars. Apple wants to sell them phones. And the president wants him to keep placing big, beautiful orders with American farmers. So President Trump is traveled to China with an extraordinary lineup of America's most powerful business leaders. Over 18 of them, trillions of dollars of net worth. Why? I said this last week before Trump went to China. I said, number one is this is economic. Number two, that Trump is coming out of there with an oil deal. China will be buying U.S. oil. This is part and parcel to what is happening in Iran specifically. Why? I mean, there's a few different ways that you could look at Iran and what's happening there. And I think that it's almost like two birds, one stone for Donald Trump. Number one is you're relinquishing the control of the old guard. People are like, wait, what's the old guard, Josh? What is that? The old guard is the old European aristocracy. It's the bloodlines. It is the old royal lineage. It's the remnants of the British Empire. It is the agents that have filtered out throughout the world, like Soros and other aspects of it that have infiltrated various countries, Australia, Canada, the United Nations. It's this infrastructure that we call the old guard or the old New World Order, the liberal-based, rules-based order that was formed after World War II, established Bretton Woods, and moved forth with their agenda to rule and dominate the world through a one-world commune-fascist government. That has been systematically decimated over the last decade by Trump, but more specifically over the last year by Trump. None more so than what has happened just since January 2026. The taking out of Maduro in Venezuela, Trump sending Delta Force in there, grabbing Maduro, pulling him out, was a massive hit to this global infrastructure. See, China is constructed country. China didn't rise up to this power by themselves. China got there with massive amounts of help. And the people helping China were the globalists, were the old guard, were the remnants of the British Empire. For goodness sakes, I mean, it was the Sassoon and the Rothschild families that owned China for a very, very long time. And part of this deal to industrialize China and rise China up to the behemoth that it is today economically, as well as militarily, and to basically undermine the United States of America was, number one, cheap energy. And that cheap energy came from three different partitions: Venezuela, Iran, and Russia. And it was about 30% of market value of how they were getting that oil. So when you started to take out and dismantle what's known as the Belt and Roads Initiative, and this was advertised and marketed by the World Economic Forum in 2008 as the new Silk Road, China's Belt and Roads Initiative, and what it's going to do for global trade. Well, that global trade infrastructure that China was setting up was actually the infrastructure for the New World Order. And China was going out there and getting monopoly on the majority of these ports and the access corridors for energy and rare earth minerals and metals. They would go into third world countries. They would negotiate to build roads and infrastructure. In exchange, they get to extract the minerals and the metals and the oil, and then they owned the ports, and then they owned the Panama Canal, and they controlled all different aspects of different energy corridors. But who was really behind that? Well, China facilitated the majority of their money exchanges through London, the Bank of London. And London was making a massive amount of money off of it. And they were really guiding China to this homogenical level of success globally. And Trump dismantled that first pillar right there in Venezuela. And then obviously Iran. And you said, well, what about Russia? Russia is part of what I call the Sovereign Alliance. Trump is working with Xi and Putin to bring about this new multipolar world framework. And if you go back to the Alaska summit, you can actually see how this began to come about. But moving forward, when we look at Iran, there's a few different scenarios you have to look at here. Number one is Iran was hitting various different British targets within Qatar and Iraq. The lot of the oil infrastructure that was all force majeure was British oil infrastructure. Understand that. Number two, the British controlled, or the old guard controlled the Straits of Hormuz with something known as the Iran Terror Premium. The Iran Terror Premium is pretty easy to understand. The Ayatollah and the mullahs, the clergy, the theocracy that controlled Iran was controlled by MI6, was controlled by British intelligence, if you want to think about it like that. The day that the Shah got overthrown, they put Khamenei in a plane in England and sent him back to Iran. And then immediately you started getting the threats of terrorism. And every time that the Ayatollah would come out and threaten the Straits of Hormuz, Lloyd's of London, a 300-year-old insurance company, obviously out of London, would raise insurance premiums. That raising of insurance premiums would skyrocket the value of gas per barrel $5 to $15 on average. And when you accumulate that over 47 years of various different Ayatollahs coming out and threatening the Strait of Hormuz and Lloyd's of London jacking up those interest premium rates, you're talking about $3 trillion in the global economy that has been siphoned out as profitability. Now, that's horrible because at the same time that Lloyd's of London would go out there and increase the rates, the various different derivatives traders and other market traders in London would go and place their bets for or against the market and make swaths of money. This is one methodology of economic control that this old empirical system had over the Middle East and the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump dismantled that within just a matter of days. When Lloyd's of London sat there and pulled all the insurance premiums from all the ships going through the Strait of Hormuz, when the United States began to attack Iran, Trump came out and said, we will insure any boat that wants to travel through the Strait of Hormuz, and we'll do it at a lower than your current premium rate. And immediately Lloyd's of London had to flip back and go back and renegotiate and say, oh, no, we will absolutely, keep the insurance premiums. So that's one aspect of it. At the same time, the global energy supply was massively diminished. And what happened is Scott Bessent, Secretary of Treasury, goes out there and lifts certain sanctions on Russia. The sanctions primarily were for ocean-borne oil. Now, that's interesting. That means that Russia would have to have oil out at sea prepped. Well, guess what they did? They did. As of August 21st, 2025, and why is that so familiar is because that's a day after the Russian summit, Russia ordered millions of barrels of oil out to sea with no contracts and no buyers, and it just sat there waiting for that day, almost like Trump and Putin were negotiating and talking together. So when we start to get into this, what we start to understand is that Trump has decimated this old guard, this new world order. And this is actually what happened is last week, you had Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, head over to Armenia, and they had a group with all of these various different European and other globalist nations to reformulate their rules-based international order and keep it going, but without the United States of America, and in a sense, in competition against the United States of America. And you got to understand that that is a big threat to Donald Trump, to the United States, and to what is being formed and created here. Days later, Barack Obama, Alex Soros, and others were seen in Canada meeting with Mark Carney. That's interesting as well. It's almost like they are guiding them to the formation of a new world order that's going to compete with this multipolar world framework that is rising up right now. So Trump heading to China right now is critically important because he's going to go in there with these 18 CEOs and he's going to come out with every single one of those companies and corporations having some sort of economic deal. Now, the type of economic deals that are made with China, it comes through the idea of mutually assured economic destruction. It's a methodology to ensure that kinetic warfare doesn't really happen because we are economically dependent upon each other. Now, I don't know how this is going to be negotiated, but I do know that energy deals are going to come out of it. And if you understand the energy situation, this is one of the main reasons that Trump has cornered the global energy market. That's why he took out Venezuela. That's why he negotiated with Russia. And that's why he took out Iran, because now China is forced into purchasing Venezuelan oil from U.S. companies through the port of America at premium rates, not at discounted rates, that China wants the Strait of Hormuz completely open and not under control of Oman or Iran. And Trump is working on doing that. And I think Xi Jinping is going to step in and help and negotiate that as well. But here is the other caveat, is that everything in this world is moving to artificial superintelligence. I don't care, you're like, oh my God, it's the devil, it's Satan, it's the Antichrist. Okay, I get it. Like I get it, right? But Pandora's box is open. You're not fucking putting it back in. There is not one thing you can do to change artificial intelligence and its evolution right now. It's just, you have to accept it and you have to at least learn to understand it. You can completely reject yourself from the system. Fine, great, I understand. But it's still going to be a reality. Understand that reality is that it's moving from artificial general intelligence, where it's at right now, to artificial superintelligence, and that could happen any day. And within that time frame, we are moving in what's known as a 500-year leap. In the next 20 years, we're going to technologically advance about 500 years. Massive. But whatever country obtains artificial superintelligence first is going to be the real one that's going to have global homogeny, is going to rule and dominate the world in the context of making the choices and the changes. And they're going to be the big police guy on the block that nobody wants to fuck with. And right now, the only two countries that matter within that race are the United States and China. And China is ahead of us right now in that race, but Donald Trump has made great strides to stop and quell China's progress. One of the ways that he did that is understanding what makes up artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has three core fundamental parts: data, computation, and energy. Computation, Trump went out there and limited the amount of chips that could be sold to China. China really, really wants these high-level AI chips that NVIDIA produces. Well, guess what? The CEO of NVIDIA is on the plane with Donald Trump and is in Beijing right now, and I guarantee they're going to have some type of deal. But that's going to come out with various different treaty negotiations, I believe, with how that actually happens. But energy becomes the core component. And I think that this is what Trump needed to get in place prior to going to China, because once he controlled the global energy trade, then China basically acquiesces to them. So China might say that they have a massive strategic petroleum reserve. And they do. But guess what? If you added in a military war, 100 days of military war, China could only last 100 days. And that's not including all of the civilian infrastructure that they would have to energize, which means that China needs independent energy producers that are outside of the global framework to get their energy. Well, Donald Trump just eliminated that. Russia, Venezuela, and Iran, which means that he's forcing China into game theory, a strategic channel to where China is forced to buy oil from the channels that are controlled by, or the corridors that are controlled by, the United States of America. Last year, Donald Trump went out there and he negotiated a defense cooperation agreement and a defense pact with various different nations in the Middle East: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, all of these great countries. And one of the things that happened from that is he gave them F-35s and massive amounts of militaries and so forth. Well, with the defense cooperation agreements and the defense pacts, what this means is that when China goes to purchase oil from Saudi Arabia and they're at war with the United States of America, Donald Trump can implement proxy sanctions directly on China. And because of the defense cooperation agreement, Saudi Arabia will not sell oil to China. So that cuts one lifeline off of it. Well, they can't get it from Venezuela. They can't get it from Iran, at least not right now, because we've proven that we can shut down the Straits of Hormuz. And they're not going to get it from Russia, primarily in the context of a war, because if Russia gives China oil during a war with the United States of America, that means that Russia has just entered the war, and the United States would take that as that threat in action. So the other methodology is that Donald Trump not only contained China energetically, but he also reversed the whole perspective of the world and how we view oil. Think about this. Vocal is off. You mean like, I don't know. Okay. Think about this for a second. Right now, you have Kuwait, UAE, Saudi Arabia bombing Iran. Just like I said was going to happen, that the regional partners in the Middle East, after they got bombed, are going to start bombing Iran. Trump is going to pull out of the kinetic conflict, and he's going to let the regional partners handle the hardliners within the IRGC. That's going to bring about drastic change within the Middle East. But one of the things that this is going to do is this is going to produce massive problems with the flow of energy globally, especially through the Straits of Hormuz. This primarily affects other countries in Europe, not the United States, though, because the United States is an independent producer of their own oil. So what is happening right now is all of these ships from around the world that would typically go to the Straits of Hormuz are now coming to the Gulf of America. Billions of dollars of oils are being sold each day in the United States of America because of what Trump created in the Middle East. In other words, Trump now has global energy homogeny. He has global control over the energy markets. Now, you're like, gas prices are high, Josh. Yeah, he just reduced the federal gas tax. Next thing I think he's going to do is he's going to cap domestic oil production per barrel, probably to $30 to $60. That would be my thoughts. And that'll reduce it drastically for the American people. And if he did that, what's going to happen next is that once the Middle East is all figured out, we have Qatar leaving, UAE leaving OPEC, and you'll probably have other countries leave OPEC, that once all of that figures out, you're going to have the largest producer and supplier of oil, the United States of America, probably selling gas and oil at $60 or $50 a barrel, which means that in the context of market demand and supply, if the United States has the majority of the supply and most people are going to the United States to get their oil and gas, let's just say 60 to 70% of that, because the Middle East is closed down and the Straits of Hormuz is closed down, and there's a war breaking out between Iran and the other regional partners there, and there's this war being fought there, no oil's flowing through that. So all of those purchasers of oil shift to the Gulf of America. And then Trump comes out, he caps the price at like 50, 60 bucks. Then when that war ends, what happens? Everybody else has to come down to that price. When you control the market at that level, everybody else has to come down in price, which means that you could have a drastic decrease in energy and oil prices across the board at the end of this Iran conflict. At least that's my thoughts. So why is China so important? I'm telling you why. Because this is avoiding war. This is reestablishing a new economic framework globally with the United States and China of how we work together to produce this idea of global economic, mutually assured economic destruction, as well as getting China to buy American oil directly, probably $300 billion to $400 billion deal. Why is that so important? Because that means Trump has Xi Jinping and China by the balls. Love it. Man, I didn't expect to take 40 minutes to talk about that one article, but it was a good one. So the U.S. and China just found something they both agree on. Both sides confirmed that no country should be allowed to charge tolls in the Straits of Hormuz, a direct shot at Iran's demand to collect fees as a precondition to ending the war. China is playing both sides carefully. It supports Iran's sovereignty, vetoes the U.S.-backed UN resolution on Hormuz shipping last month, but now is publicly aligned with Washington on the toll question. Man. All right, we're going to do a hard transition in content here. I got to take a wet the whistle. Watermelon's not my favorite. Tasty. All right. Let me see here. All right, just a little disclaimer before I read this one. Read the fine print. If you go to purchase it, I get this for my kids. I pay the subscription, but read the disclaimer. They do charge a monthly fee automatically, and I believe it's 15 days after you receive your copy. So just keep that in mind when you do this one. But all right, parents, real talk for a second. America's about to hit a huge milestone. We're coming up on America's 250th birthday, 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-government the world has ever seen. This is the perfect moment to help your kids understand why this country matters, not just fireworks and hot dogs, but story behind it all. There's a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday, and it's honestly a great way to introduce kids to how America began. The founding fathers were, what they risked, and why the ideas they fought for still matter today. The guide sends kids back to a moment when brave men signed the Declaration of Independence knowing full well they were risking their lives for freedom. It breaks it all down in a way kids can actually understand and enjoy without watering it down or turning it into boring schoolwork. If you care about raising kids who know where this country came from and why it's worth preserving, this is something you'll want to grab. And the best part, it's completely free with a special offer. You just need to pay $2 for shipping and processing. Just head to freeusabirthday.com. That's freeusabirthday.com. And the Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday is yours for your kids today. America's story matters. Make sure the next generation knows it. See, cross-eyed and painless. I should do like every night on a show, I should like hint some type of song. And then you guys have to guess the band, right? I just did, whether people saw it, realize it or not. But I won't give you the band. I'll only give you the song name, like Cross-Eyed and Painless. All And also, so we do have a great amount of, not a great, we only have a few sponsors, and we keep our sponsors list very, very small for a reason. If you go to redpills.tv, there's ways to support us over there, whether it's direct support, whether it's, getting a subscription on our premium channels, or it's going to our sponsors. And if you go on to redpills.tv, you'll see the sponsors tab up there. You can click on that and find all of our sponsors. Lifewave, they're absolutely awesome. I hope you guys are patching. I want to hear more testimonials. We talked to a guy just last week who's having massive impact on his life. I want to hear your testimonials on that. Lifewave, and so that's life.redpills.tv. Then you got Pet Club. Pet Club, guys, these products are freaking phenomenal. I took the Clarity today. Can you understand? I took the Clarity right before I came on the show, and just look how alert and I'm just going. Really good stuff. So if you want to go to Pet Club, I got to look up the link because I have new links out there. There it is. It's petclub.redpills.tv, petclub.redpills.tv, and pick yourself up one of those alpha packs that has the Coriolis Versicolor, it has the Restore, it has the Clarity, and it has the gel. Get that one, because that one's a badass one. That's the one that I get shipped here every month. But yeah, go check out our sponsors over there if you guys are interested in helping support everything that we do here. All right. China's story is bigger than anyone knew, from alleged Chinese spies to top Democrats to claims that voter registration systems up to 18 states were penetrated during the 2020 election. We're about to see a wave of new shake up Washington. Listen to John Solomon here. When I pull it up, don't worry. I'm like, listen to John Solomon. I just sit there looking at the screen.
Well, remember, we had Kathy Hochul, had someone working for her in New York that just got taken out last year. We got this mayor that just pled guilty this week to directly conspiring with China to inject propaganda into the United States. We've got the Singham Network, which has close ties to the Chinese Communist Party, as we've been documenting over the last several months. We have Eric Swalwell, who was sleeping allegedly with a Chinese spy. We have Dianne Feinstein, whose driver was apparently a Chinese spy while she was overseeing the Senate Intelligence Committee. And you are correct. What we have now learned 6 years too late from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is that there are between 12 and 18 states whose voter registration databases were penetrated by China during the 2020 election. While we were being told and force-fed a fake story that it was the most secure election in American history, China had infiltrated voter registration data in numerous states. The last document I saw estimated 12 to 18. I think by the end of this month, Tulsi Gabbard will be able to identify for the first time which states got hacked or were penetrated by China. How long did we know? Why were they kept secret by the CIA and the FBI and the Homeland Security Department? And I think that could have a profound effect on senators who thus far have been kicking the can down the road on the Safe America Act. But when you find out your voter registration database was hacked by the Chinese Communist Party and you weren't told about it for 6 years,
Am I back? I hit the cable with my foot.
Adding more election security measures to the 2026 election.
Wouldn't that be a topic of conversation in Beijing over maybe state dinner tonight, sir? Do you agree with me?
It should be. The president is fully aware of what I've reported, and he's fully aware of what's coming out in the next few weeks. So he seems to be read in. I suspect that the release of these next round of documents were withheld until after the meeting so that the president could have a private conversation before it explodes onto the American scene in a big way. But
so let me talk about this a little bit, because this is exactly what we've been saying. So, number one, we've been talking about how Tulsi Gabbard is leading the election infrastructure integrity task force. And that the reason that she was at Fulton County, Georgia, is because there were indications that foreign adversaries were involved within the stealing of the 2020 election. Now we're finding, as John Solomon's reporting here, that up to 18 states were penetrated during the 2020 election. Now, John Radcliffe, who was DNI at the time, actually put this in his report, but it was massively drowned out. And so he knew about this. He also knew about it when he came in as acting director of the CIA. We're going to talk about John Radcliffe here in a minute. But the reason why the majority of the D-class on 2020 election has not come out, why all of this stuff hasn't come out, because China is a main player in all of this. Now, here's where it begins to get interesting. Trump is in China right now. Bannon asked John Sullivan, do you think that this is going to be part of the negotiation? Sullivan's like, yeah, I do. Which means that Trump is going to tell Xi Jinping that, hey, look, our intelligence agencies found this information that you guys meddled in our election in 2020. This is going to go public. This is not good. And China's going to come back and say, well, you know, we did. And here's the information. Here's who we worked with. Here's the networks that operated. Think about that for a minute. What happens if China just hands over the information and says, hey, try to leave us out of it, but here's the information? I don't know. Just a thought. Timing is everything. Timing is everything. So John Sullivan started listing off the CCP ties. Now, do you remember who Hillary Clinton was selling off U.S. military SAP programs, special access programs to? It was China. How was it being done? Well, within those SAP program emails, it was the university and professor who were getting the grants to the National Science Foundation, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, or NASA. And then China would go into those universities. They would take those professors through the 10,000 Talents program or other educational exchange programs set up by Barack Obama, and they'd bring them over to China, and then they would they would influence them to give up their research. And that's how China advanced its massive amounts of research. Well, what did we just find out? Harvard's neurotech trader defects to Beijing. Ex-chemistry chair now forges CCP's AI super soldiers after just 2 days in prison. Yes, this is Dr. Charles Lieber, one that we've talked about a lot, is now working in China. Go figure. I wonder how many of the other ones are going to start heading over to China. Okay. So China is very important. We're going to see, and by the way, there is a reason why Trump wanted to take Rubio with him. Now, I think that you're going to see some type of strategic partnership when Trump leaves China. I think Iran will be done within a few weeks. I think that economically there's going to be great deals, but I think that next week, you're going to start seeing a dumping of a lot of this information, massive amounts of 2020 election fraud information. And Joan Agus, she said the CIA raided Tulsi's office. That is a misheadline. I saw that headline too on X, and that headline is actually highly inaccurate. They didn't raid Tulsi's office. They went in the middle of the night and took files out that they didn't want declassified. Not necessarily raided, right? Okay. I talked about this last night at DEF CON, and I'm only going to go over briefly, but I wanted to bring this up because this is a part of all of this. Over the last, from 2020 to 2024, the Biden administration allowed 23 plus million illegal immigrants to flood our border into our country. But they weren't the only ones that did it. They worked with global and international help. The United Nations was one of those organizations. Last week, this is from the Department of State website, okay? Last week, the United States refused to participate in the UN's review of Global Compact of Migration. The United States objects to the Global Compact of Migration and the UN efforts to facilitate replacement migration to the United States and our Western allies. Listen to this. This is from the State Department. UN agencies systematically facilitated mass migration into America and Europe, even as citizens of these nations called for restrictions on migration. Now the Global Compact's latest report urges nations to expand migration pathways and pursue regularization of migrants. UN agencies working with the NGOs they fund establish a migration corridor through Central America to the U.S. border. As the American people suffered under the unprecedented wave of mass migration, the UN was on the ground pipelining migrants to our southern border. UN officials greeted migrants along the route through the deadly Darien Gap. UN-funded NGOs handed out maps to migrants en route to the U.S. After facilitating mass migration to the United States, UN agencies condemned the deportation of illegal immigrants. It goes on. It talks about Europe and so forth. But this is so critically important because if you go back to the national security strategy and the national defense strategy that came out through the Trump administration, there's a realignment of priorities globally. And one of those organizations that's been kind of kicked off the list that's being ignored altogether is the United Nations. And the United States has absolutely zero respect for a lot of these various different sub-organizations that operate under the UN. And those same NGO infrastructures are the ones that made billions off of that mass migration through the Biden administration's funneling of money to them. And a lot of them are actually under investigation. So we will probably be hearing about this more here in the near future. John Solomon, once again, let's listen to what he said here, because this is important. Guys, they think they're getting power back, which means that they have a plan.
Meanwhile, the world has been talking about a story that we broke overnight. Documents we got from Kash Patel's FBI reveal something a little troubling, something we didn't know. Let's remind everybody what we were told at the time. In January 2025, when President Trump was about to take his second oath of office and return to the White House, we were told that Jack Smith went to the court and dismissed all those criminal cases. Well, there's a little wrinkle to it. First off, he did not dismiss them with prejudice, meaning that they were dismissed without prejudice and they could be brought back again. But more troubling is what we learned inside the FBI's files. The FBI created a memo laying out how they could resume the case as soon as President Trump returned or left office in 2029, and they extended the retention of the evidence, something that normally doesn't happen. When you close down a case in the FBI, you're supposed to give back the evidence, disband it, erase it, and be done with it. But not when it came to Donald Trump. Nope. In the Arctic Frost investigation, the one involving January 6th, the FBI extended its hold on its evidence to 2030, 2 years after President Trump will have left office. All the markings of a plan or a plot to...
Okay. So whether they are preserving it for 2028 or when they believe that they're going to win the midterms and utilize that same evidence on a second level, I don't know. But they do believe that they're going to come into power at some point in time. I think we have other news for them. I don't think that that's going to happen. We're starting to see the indications of that. Like I've been saying this whole year, I said, you're going to start seeing Democrat candidates, Democrat congressmen and senators, as well as Republicans start to drop off. They're going to start resigning. They're starting to get prosecuted. Swalwell was one of them. Gonzalez. It's coming, guys. Shifty Ship is next. Fauci's next. Oh, it's coming. Donald Trump posted this last night on his True Social. This is just an indication of what is to come. Understand.
We have them destroying evidence right and left in Georgia, in Cobb County, Gwinnett County, Fulton County. It's everything from shredding ballots to wiping machines and replacing servers. All these machines should have been impounded the day after the election and reviewed for forensic analysis. We have so many judges out there now that are result driven instead of applying the rule of law like it should be. And we have political prosecutions that never should have happened in this country. Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Arizona. All those were fatally flawed by massive fraud in every manner and means you can think of, but especially insidious and troubling is the machine fraud conducted through the Dominion voting systems.
Okay. Sidney Powell discussing the rampant voter fraud in the 2020 election. Donald Trump just posted that on his True Social. Now, why is he doing this? Well, you have the deposition of Eric Comer with the CEO of Dominion talking about how, yeah, there absolutely was network access to Dominion's machines, Venezuela and Serbia. You have DNI Tulsi Gabbard, who seized Puerto Rican Dominion machines and found this, enough so to bring about a grand jury, which has already issued subpoenas in Maricopa County and Fulton County, Georgia. You have Trump and China right now. China was one of the foreign adversaries involved in this. It's coming, guys. It is absolutely coming. This is just prepping the field for a mass game that's about to happen. You know, last year, I talked about this specifically when Doge was in place. And I talked about, when Elon Musk put that email out to all government employees and they had by Friday to send their 5 points of what they did that week, there was a reason for that. He didn't give a shit what they did that week. It was all about accountability. Who's actually working for the government and who's not. What you're finding out is that a Congress subcommittee would go out there and they would generate an office over someplace in Washington, D.C., and they would hire 5 or 6 people to work in that office. And when you go there, there's nobody there. There's nobody doing any work. There's 5 people in the payroll. They're all getting paychecks. They're all spending the money, but there's nobody there. You go research those people. They don't even exist. And these are what we call employees in name only. Well, when it comes to votes and when it comes to federal benefits, whether it's SNAP or whether it's Social Security or Medicaid and Medicare, you get what you call citizens in name only. And this is what's being discovered state to state to state. I said this last year, and we're finding out right now of how it's happening. I mean, you have over 180 old folks' homes that are just being shut down in California because they're fraudulent. They have fake clients, people. In the 2020 election, 1.8 million ghost voters identified across 353 counties in 29 states. 8 entire states had voter registrations exceeding 100% of eligible voting age citizens statewide in the 2020 election. Alaska, Colorado, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Vermont. Voter rolls contain massive inaccuracies, including potentially dead, moved, or ineligible residents. What happens when you have voter rolls that have more people, 100% more, or more people that are registered to vote, and then you can't find those people? Those are citizens in name only, as in they don't really exist. They're fictitious people that are simply generated and created for fraud. The FBI is officially investigating the 2020 election in Wisconsin. Wisconsin, interesting. So, an appeals court, I love this one. This is a good one. An appeals court has blocked the $83 million judgment to E. Jean Carroll in favor of Donald Trump. Yeah, this bitch thought she was going to lie in front of the camera, get New York State to change the rules, Letitia James out there. And what happens? Trump won the appeal so far, and they have blocked the $83 million settlement. Thank goodness. Well, this is interesting. Billionaire Stephen Klobuchar, the former close friend and backer of Eric Swalwell, has been arrested in Los Angeles. Klobuchar went viral last month, shredding Swalwell for deceiving him. You remember, the Klobuchar is the one that allowed Eric to live in his $1 million home in California, as well as gave millions and millions of dollars to Eric Swalwell's campaign, while Eric Swalwell was being a little slut, as well as, sleeping with Chinese spies. According to the California Post, Klobuchar was arrested for attempting to prevent or dissuade a victim or witness from testifying. It's like their whole network is being taken down. Look, do you understand that? It's like the Democrat. Look, you have Act Blue under investigation for fraud. You have the NGOs associated with the stealing of the 2020 election, with the formation of the various different protests and riots throughout the country, with the mass migration at the southern border. They're all under investigation. You have congressmen being taken down because of their corruption and criminality. You have their donors that are being taken down. White House announces that fraud czar J.P. Vance is headed to Maine in relation to fraud investigations. The state's Democrat governor, Janet Mills, has been hiding data that could be unveil massive fraud, but she's also just dropped out of her election as the incumbent. She was going to win, but she said, I have no more money, because the Democrats are having a hard time finding money this election season. Let's listen here. Matt Getz. Is that Ian? Ian Trotter?
You are literally the man who wrote the book on John Brennan. Do you think he's in any real trouble now that Miami-based FBI agents are up at Langley asking questions?
Yeah, he's clearly backpedaling, Matt, and he is he's getting hit from various pressure points. I think it was this last night, he is saying that there is a legion. There is a legion of intelligence officers within the Trump administration that are actively working against the president. This is critical because just 4 months ago, he was questioned at a George Mason a panel where a NCTC analyst had questioned him about the Tulsi Gabbard email releases regarding the direct association that he has to orchestrating, as Roger Stone has said, and as I'm saying, the Russian collusion hoax. So the fact that he is now saying that there are members within the Trump administration that clearly the president himself should be wary of questioning absolutely everybody that is working in the administration. The fact that John Brennan is now saying this tells me that he is backpedaling, and he may very well, Matt, he may soon begin to sing, as they say. That would be releasing names.
Okay. Ian, man, I didn't realize at first that was Ian. I know Ian. That's pretty cool. So this is where it gets interesting. Is John Brennan getting ready to sing like a bird? Well, John Brennan last week, as Ian was saying, came out and threatened Trump indirectly by saying, don't worry, we have a legion of national security folks in the intelligence community and within the State Department, so forth, and law enforcement agencies that basically work for the deep state. That's either kind of a red herring to Trump, or that's kind of maybe an indication that, hey, we can take you down at any time. We get other indications of this actually throughout the day. One of the things that we just got was Tulsi Gabbard's office was alerted that the CIA took various documents from her that were meant to be declassified. This is huge. There's a CIA whistleblower that testified today with Rand Paul on COVID-19, but he put out a lot more than just that. What does this signify? It signifies that there's still a lot of bad actors inside the intel community, and that I think there's only really one man you can bring in. There's only one man that you can really bring in to actually take care of this, and that's going to be General Michael Flynn, who Donald Trump absolutely just retweeted yesterday. Hold on, Red. There's that link for that lady that I was looking. So, John Brennan, Fort Pierce, Florida, under grand jury investigation for the 2016-2017 intelligence community assessment. This is the damning amount of evidence that basically shows that the Russian collusion was nothing more than a hoax, and that him and Obama in December went and changed the whole damn thing to make it look like Donald Trump was guilty. And Brennan lied about it, and that's being investigated. Now, there's multiple different witnesses that have came in and testified in that. Some people are saying that Brennan's going to get off of the hand slap. You have Joe DeGenova over there, now a U.S. attorney that's investigating this. I think he's going to expand this grand jury investigation into the complete FISA-gate, into Crossfire Hurricane, and the illegality of the FISA abuse. I think that that's going to be expanded. That's the whole reason they're bringing Joe in. And I think Brennan is just a tip of the iceberg. And Brennan isn't the top-level player in this, guys. Brennan is just a low-hanging fruit. He's who you use to get to Obama. Now, what did we get here? Anna Paulina Luna today, she said, given the nature of the doxing question, we are sending to preservation notice. Docs need to be returned to ODNI, given that ODNI was given direction and authority by president to declass RFK, MLK, JFK regarding MK Ultra. These were documents specifically requested by my task force and currently being used for our investigation. In other words, there was documents related to MK Ultra that were taken out by the CIA of the ODNI building that were meant for Tulsi Gabbard. What do they relate to? MK Ultra in connection to RFK, MLK, and JFK's assassination. Huge. Tim Burchett. The CIA lied about MK Ultra existing. They were sued and were forced to admit it, but say they aren't doing it now. Which lie do you believe? Subpoena and preserve these documents now. In other words, you have two congressmen that are ready to go all hell-bent on the CIA. This is huge because today a CIA whistleblower came out and told everybody what was actually going on. Explosive testimony from a CIA whistleblower. His conclusions: Fauci intentionally influenced the intelligence community analysis of COVID origins. This was not incompetence. It was a cover-up. So go back to the guy that told you just last week, you don't have to worry about the statute of limitations on Fauci because he's going to be indicted probably under the same charges that David Morans, his assistant at NIAID, was indicted on, right? Then we hear the DOJ just Monday saying, hey, we're not going to charge Fauci for perjury, but we are investigating some other things. What are these other angles? Right here through the CIA whistleblower testimony, you are finding it. And I called it way ahead of time. And I said, Fauci was the one who went in there with the CIA and told them to retract this and pull that information out there to hide the origins of the gain of function research at Wuhan lab. All right, let's listen to the whistleblower here and what he has to say, because this man, I don't say hero too much, but this guy deserves our respect.
But your conclusion is that changing from the scientific consensus of it being from a lab to a neutral position by the CIA was significantly influenced by Anthony Fauci?
It was significantly influenced by Anthony Fauci's injecting himself into the IC. And to go to the second part of your question about what happened, particularly during the 90-day study, we have documentation that shows that as of August 12th, the CIA was considering calling this a lab leak, August 12th of 2021. And then that changed on August 17th of 2021. Right. And unfortunately, because the CIA would not provide us documentation that we asked for, we have no idea why that changed. And that's...
And they weren't alone, because we know the FBI was coming to the same conclusion that it was lab leak, as well as the FBI.
Okay, so very, very important there. Now, one of the things to understand about this, is people who are out there talking about it right now in the chat, is that the auto pen pardon, the pardon does not work for treason or grand conspiracies, especially ones that are continuing, which pretty sure Fauci's going to be getting called in and is going to lie. But understand, the reason for the lab leak, the reason why they leaked it out of the lab in Wuhan was to create a global emergency so that they could get mail-in ballots so they could steal the 2020 election. Remember, this is all going to come together at the end. All of these points are directly connected. And here's him talking about the MLK and RFK files. Listen to this.
The CIA refused to provide information necessary to understand why analytical standards at the CIA were violated. The CIA illegally monitored the computer and phone usage of DIG personnel, their investigations, and contact with whistleblowers. These were Americans being spied upon illegally while executing duties directed by the president and under the authority of the Director of National Intelligence. One CIA contractor assisting with the DIG's investigation into the events that transpired between 2022 and 2023 was fired by the CIA one day after meeting with the DIG. When the DIG ceased operations, the CIA also took back 40 boxes of JFK files and MK Ultra files being processed for declassification by D&I Gabbard.
Okay, a lot to unravel right there. Catherine Herridge put this out earlier. And she has the receipts to back this up. From her February 5th post, this is her February 5th post right here. Credible sources tell me that elements of the intelligence community, federal law enforcement, and Congress have targeted DNI Tulsi Gabbard's Directors Initiative Group, or DIG, because it revealed uncomfortable facts and findings on several matters entrenched members of these bureaucracies don't want out there. This was in February 5th, 2026. That was just confirmed by this whistleblower. As early as February, I began receiving credible reporting that DNI's investigative team was being tracked and communications collected because their work was revealing uncomfortable facts. So what does this mean? The CIA was spying on DNI's Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Their boss, DNI Tulsi Gabbard, was being spied on by the CIA as well as her DIG committee. Now, here's what I said about this. Sounds like it is time for CIA Director Ratcliffe to be fired. Whether he knew about this or not, it is the point. If he knew, he should be fired. If he didn't know, he should be fired. It's time to bring in General Flynn as CIA Director. That's my thoughts. And just the other day, what did Trump do? Oh, he retweeted the general. 2020 election was stolen. Here it comes. Tick tock. Goodness, this is going to be glorious. This is going to be absolutely glorious. And 1 second, I got to get in here. We got to do just a hard transition real quick. And we're going to do, I'm going to just see if the ad that I'm looking for shows up on Rumble. Nope, it didn't. That's okay. We're going to do this one real quick, and then we'll get into the rest of the news here. Still haven't tried 1775 coffee? Now's your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped. Only 1,000 units. You're getting the bold dark roast that hits hard, the smooth medium roast, and that vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focused, no crash. All single origin, small batch, toxin free and mold free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's opinions, and a black 1775 tumbler. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up in Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. All right. Thank you for allowing me to do that real quick. J.D. Vance's anti-fraud task force just withheld $1.4 billion in federal funding after a sweeping crackdown on fraud operations in California, Minnesota, and other states. Ohio is now facing mass calls for federal investigation after the country's second largest Somali hotbed, Franklin County in Columbus, was found to be likely rife with Medicaid fraud. Billions of dollars could have been stolen, and the fraud is centered in 2 zip codes merely 4 miles apart. And it just happens to be filled with Somalians. Democrat state assembly candidate was kicked off the ballot after 90% of her 5,258 total signatures were invalidated by the city board of elections. And yes, she is Somalian and Muslim. Let's listen to J.D. Vance here real quick.
The Hawaii Medicaid the Hawaii Medicaid program has received billions and billions of dollars from the federal taxpayers. And of course, Hawaii taxpayers have paid in a lot of money into this program over the last years as well. Guess how many convictions or indictments has Hawaii had over the last few years in its Medicaid fraud program? The answer is 0. Not a single indictment, not a single conviction, because the administrators of the Hawaii program just don't take it seriously. They don't think that fraud is a big enough problem. They don't care about protecting resources. They don't care about protecting that Medicaid program. So what does that mean? That means that if you're committing fraud in Medicaid in Hawaii, at least up until now, hopefully now they're going to take it seriously, you have had effectively free reign from the government of Hawaii to commit as much fraud as you want. That is a complete disgrace. In New York, which does a little bit better, but not by much, New York has had 9 indictments over the last year. 9 indictments. That's a $100 billion Medicaid program just in New York, and you've had 9 indictments. Indiana, which has about a third of the population of the state of New York, has had more than 4 times as many indictments over the same period. So does anybody here seriously think that the good people of Indiana are 12 times more likely to commit fraud than the people of New York? No, of course not. That's absurd. What is happening is that the leadership in New York are just not taking the fraud issue seriously. They're not using these anti-fraud control units to actually investigate and indict the fraud.
And what is he doing? He's withholding billions of dollars in federal funds to ensure that, hey, if you're not going to prosecute it, well, you're not getting that money. And what they're going to use is they're going to use federal funds as leverage for these states to begin investigating and prosecuting these people within their states. But here's the thing, is we know that the governments of these states are directly involved. The governors, the attorney generals, they're directly involved with this. This is why George Soros and the NGOs went out there and campaigned so damn hard to get these people elected, because they're in on it. Listen to this. This is interesting. Lebanon has filed a formal complaint against Iran at the UN Security Council for the first time it has taken such a step. This is kind of interesting. Now, the complaint accuses Tehran of violating the Vienna Convention, interfering with Lebanese sovereign decision-making, and involving the IRGC in unlawful actions that cause widespread destruction. Lebanon also challenges Iran's narrative around the killing of Iranian diplomats in Beirut, saying some of the deceased were not officially registered as diplomats. The complaint alleges Iran failed to comply with Lebanese decisions regarding the ambassador and continued meddling in internal affairs. It's almost like everybody's turning on Iran right now in the sense of all of their partners. Saudi Arabia secretly struck Iran directly. It's the first time the kingdom has ever done this, and it changes everything we knew about how the Gulf states see their own security. For decades, Riyadh outsourced its deterrence to Washington. When a country starts hitting back on your territory, the balance of power in the region begins to shift. And this goes back to that idea of global homogeneity, right? Or of regional homogeneity. I said, notice a pattern. Trump sent a $60 billion arms package to the Gulf states a few weeks ago. Last year is $100+ billion defense contracts and cooperation agreements. As I said a few weeks ago, Iran will have to deal with other Gulf nations now. What does this mean? Is there's a transitional shift in the balance of power in the Middle East. The Iran is no longer the boogeyman on the street. They're no longer the big bully on the street in the Middle East. Other countries are rising up as massive military fronts. And when they begin to combine their forces, like Kuwait and Bahrain and UAE and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and they come together with countries like Israel, and they begin bombing the shit out of Iran, Iran is done. There's nothing Iran can do except go to the cold transition into a civilian component government and allow the IRGC to fail and take the blame for it. And this is what we're seeing. I believe that this is the end game that Donald Trump is setting up right now. Iran's foreign minister, Aragashi, said that Kuwait unlawfully attacked an Iranian boat and detained 4 Iranian citizens in the Persian Gulf and is demanding they return them. So now you have Kuwait involved in all of this. Now, this is kind of interesting. A report came out that a Russian cargo ship reportedly carrying 2 nuclear reactors and possibly bound for North Korea sank under unclear circumstances off the coast of Spain. Now, you have to understand, when we start talking about the old guard, the quote-unquote one world government, new world order globalists, that they need some type of global war to break out to where they have to be defended, as well as that rises them up into some position of power. For them, that has always been progressing, instigating, and starting a war with Russia. But Russia is failing to take the bait. Russia is just sustaining its special military operations within Ukraine. Ukraine has been the hotbed for that proxy. And what we are seeing potentially is this could be a terrorist attack on this Russian vessel. Yep, there we go. That could have been targeted by some other type of European country. be probably blamed on Ukraine, but I think it's doubtful. I think that this was now another type of MI6 type of incident. Now, something interesting happened the other day. Tulsi Gabbard's office came out, ODNI, the Director of National Intelligence, and said that they are investigating the hundreds of level 4 biocontainment labs around the world. Now, that's very interesting because they're also including the 72 biolabs in Ukraine. Now, the 72 biolabs in Ukraine becomes really, really important because, well, this is actually where most likely COVID originated. And I know that's not public knowledge. But when Barack Obama in 2014 shut down gain-of-function research in the United States that was happening in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, EcoHealth Alliance, Peter Daszak, Ralph Baric, these guys, right? And then Anthony Fauci directed through NIAID. It moved offshore. It moved to China, Wuhan Institute of Virology, and it moved to Ukraine through the Defense Intelligence Agency under the Defense Threat Reduction Agency through contracts with Black & Veatch, which then went out there and hired Merck and Metabiota. But this becomes strategically important because the special military operation that Putin waged in Ukraine in the eastern Donbass, this was done because over 14,500 people that are native Russians living in the eastern Donbass were being targeted biologically, biological warfare. And Putin actually testified in the UN multiple different times on this topic, and nothing was ever happened. So he went in there and liberated that entire region. Now, what would it be like if it came out that these biolabs were being utilized to create various different types of genetic viruses or biological agents? It'd be devastating. It'd be devastating to whatever intelligence apparatus or infrastructure or governments or militaries are actually behind all of that. But there's another part of all this. The one thing that I've always talked about with the Epstein files is the real Epstein files. Epstein wasn't a procurer of children for high-level profile people. He's a procurer of massive amounts of children's DNA, genetic information, as well as data, and children themselves for biomedical research. Where was this biomedical research conducted? Well, why does the United States have hundreds of biolabs spread across third world countries in autonomous zones on this planet? The reason is they throw them in places like Ukraine and Venezuela or other third world countries because international oversight doesn't give a shit. Nobody's going to look there. Then they bring in a big pharma company like Merck and they give defense contracts out. They keep it all clandestine and top secret, and they do massive amounts of biomedical research there. Well, what type of biomedical research? The biomedical research that was being done with association with Epstein, whether it's the Southern Trust Company, the New Albany Company, and the mining of genetic information or the procuring of various different children for these projects, was genetic manipulation type of experiments. Now, we don't have too many details on it, but you have to start thinking. Like, you go back to the CIA's finders. You go back to people like John of God who are running baby farms. And you got to ask yourself, why were they farming these babies? Is this for, harvesting the babies for their body parts and their organs and selling that to the black market? I think that was part of it. It's definitely not to bring them into prostitution or child sex trafficking or anything like that. It's just too expensive to raise a kid. But one of the other parts was there. I saw the word Don Kyle Donaldson, eugenics. You got to understand that the globalists that we are dealing with on this planet are eugenicists. They have been around for a very long time. Family courts in the United States used to be called eugenics courts in the late 1800s. Margaret Sanger came up through support through the Rockefellers and the Carnegies, right? These are diehard eugenicists. Now, what do they want? They want a world to where it's very similar to the movie Gattaca, where there's no genetic indifference, that everything is genetically constructed. Now, this is very scary because I've talked about this in the sense of Epstein before. And, when you get into Epstein and his various different connections, The New Albany company was headquartered on an island in the Caribbean that was owned by Google. Google owns an AI data center on that island. Google has something known as Alpha Genome. For the last 8 years, Google has developing Google Quantum AI, and they've been feeding massive amounts of biomedical and genetic information into Google Quantum AI to bring about Alpha Genome, which just launched this year. 23andMe was the Wachowski sisters. One was married to Sergey Brin and the CEO of YouTube. The other created a company called 23andMe. Well, abruptly shut down last year. Why? Well, there was a data breach and all of its DNA information got stolen. But the hackers never did anything with the information. They never went out to the open market or tried to sell it or anything. Why? Because the hackers weren't hackers. It was nothing more than a honeypotting operation. 23andMe and the various ones that were running around within Europe doing the same damn thing. These were honeypotting operations for companies like Google to bring in massive genetic profile information and feed it into their artificial intelligence. What am I getting to here? I don't know if we're ever going to find out too much information about what was really going on with Jeffrey Epstein. But let me say that I think that a lot of the disclosure information that's coming out right now on UFOs and UAPs and extraterrestrials has something to do with all of this. That there's a certain caveat within all of this that interconnects it all together. And I think that we're going to learn about that here relatively soon in the future. Now, when we start talking about genetic manipulation, that's some scary shit. But what did Tim Burchett say on my show with me and Alpha? He said that my greatest fear is that our government is running genetic experimentation, developing super soldiers. Yeah, they are. And they have been for years. And then I see everybody talking about ticks, all the ticks. Yep. Imagine just outfitting a tick with a genetic protein that once it bites you, immediately begins to transform you genetically. That shit is legit and can happen. That's crazy. So we live in very, very interesting times. It really is interesting times. What else we got going on? What's up with you guys? How are we doing? How are we doing out there? Are we doing well? Let's I'm looking at X to see if there's any breaking news. It's just all the same stuff over and over and over again. So let's talk about this, the multipolar world. Let's wrap this up here. Right now, Donald Trump is laying the groundwork for his legacy. We'd like to think that the last 2 years have been his legacy, but they're not. They're not even the beginning of what he is establishing here. We are watching the systematic destruction of the old guard. The economic system of the old world is being completely dismantled. The rising up of China that the European nations and the globalists helped to fund and create is being dismantled. The United States is rising up as a hyperpower globally. Going back to the idea of artificial superintelligence is why this is all happening. The United States is dominating in global energy, in global chipset, and soon to be in artificial intelligence. And when the United States of America hits artificial superintelligence before China, President Trump will have a legacy beyond anything we could ever imagine. And here's the thing, is other countries and nations, their competitive nature doesn't even matter at that point. Europe, like Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth have said, they don't matter in this world right now because they bring no value whatsoever to the United States of America. And see, the interesting thing about the globalist and the deep state or the New World Order is that they were only relevant when other nations, specifically the United States of America, paid attention to them and kept them in the loop. The moment that you cut them out of the system, their whole infrastructure crumbled. Everything gets defunded. And that was their greatest weakness. And I think that that will be remembered throughout time and history as President Trump being the one who brought that about. But here's where it gets interesting. President Trump is laying the groundwork for something remarkable. He calls the golden age, a new renaissance in humanity. With artificial superintelligence coming out here very, very shortly, I would say in the next year, year and a half, we will probably obtain it. The technological innovation is going to blow your fucking mind. There is something forming known as the Genesis mission through the Trump administration. 40,000 scientists coming together. And what they're doing is they're linking various different artificial intelligences, and they're taking all different types of scientific research from all jet propulsion laboratories, from all different scientific orientations around the country, universities, the Department of Energy, and they're pumping all of their information from the last 50 years into these AIs, and then they're letting these scientists go at it and basically solve science's biggest mysteries. And then from there, develop and bring about innovation. I think it's safe to say that within 3 years, maybe, 4 years, you will be able to travel to the moon for probably less than $10,000. It's going to happen very, very fast. Shit is moving very, very fast. Now, I don't look at the pinnacle of technological development as traveling to the moon, but we are about to have such a drastic change in how this world operates technologically, economically, and politically that it's going to blow the minds off of anybody 5 years from now looking backwards. Our lives are going to become, in contextual frame, much easier when it comes to how the world operates right now, in the sense of the labor force, in the sense of how we operate our daily lives. See, AI presents a double-edged sword. It can be utilized to enslave you, and it can also be utilized to free you. I don't know about the people that are behind AI and what their intentionality is, or even the government constraints that are being placed on it. All I do know is that if you don't understand this technology, that it's going to be very, very hard to move forth in the future. Because it's going to be everywhere and it's going to be implemented everywhere. It's going to take over so many aspects of our life. But we look at that as like, oh my God, well, that's going to invade our world. No, it's going to give you back time. It's going to give you back creativity. It's going to give you back ingenuity. There is an interesting fact that I learned a long time ago. And it dealt with the Roman Empire. And we always looked at the Roman Empire as the pinnacle of civilization. Is that even the peasants in the Roman Empire only worked a few days a month to survive, to take care of themselves. Now, I want you to think about that. Peasants begged for food most of the time, and when they did work, they had enough to survive quite a few weeks, and they only had to work a few different times. The lower and middle class and even the wealthy only would have to work at their trade a few different times a month to sustain themselves. I want you to begin thinking about that. What the world would be like if you only had to work 4 or 5 times a month for a few hours to sustain yourself, to live your lifestyle. Because that is the world we're transitioning to with the opportunities that AI is going to bring about. And Ultra DC says, I'll tell you, transhumanism, AI, Antichrist. Just words, dude. Listen. Transhumanism is absolutely real, and it's going to happen. That people are going to want to modify themselves with technology. They're going to want to inject computer shit into them. They're going to want to link up and sync up with AI. I don't. You don't. We still have freedom of choice. Great. Artificial intelligence, I think, is going to actually demand something like that. I'm just saying that because once ASI gets obtained, you have to have people smart enough to understand what it's saying. I agree. I don't like it, but I also wouldn't call it the Antichrist. I would say that, hey, it's a divergence that's going to happen within the global, within the social framework. 100% agree with that. But what I want, I just want my spaceship. I just want my spaceship so I can get off planet. I'm not running away, but definitely I'm going to get away. All right, guys, last one here. Rumble Wallet. Quick question. How much control do you actually have over your money right now? Technology has changed everything, and now it's changing how money works. Crypto started as a niche, but now it's going mainstream. Faster payments, more control, fewer middlemen. This isn't hype. It's just where things are going. And getting started today is easier than you think. This is where Rumble Wallet comes in. With Rumble Wallet, you can buy Bitcoin, hold dollar-backed stablecoins, even own digital gold backed by real gold, all in one place. Setup is simple. It connects to MoonPay, so you can use your debit card, credit card, or bank account and be up and running in minutes. It's not about the amount. It's about getting in early and understanding what's coming next. And once you're set up, you can even tip your favorite Rumble creators like me directly. So do this now. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description and download Rumble Wallet. From there, you can set up your wallet, tap buy, and you're in the game. Take control of your money. Get started with Rumble Wallet today. All right. Ground control to Major Tom. All right, guys, that is all I had for you tonight. Like I said, the Q&A will be Friday night, so I hope to see you guys all there. Don't forget to go on over to redpills.tv, redpills.tv, redpills.tv. You can find ways to support us. We got our sponsors over there. There's ways to donate, whether it's PayPal or GiveSendGo. You can find ways to help support everything that we do, as well as get all that information on subscriptions. I will be putting up information on there about the live Q&A so people know that they're getting that on that premium side. But if you just go and you can get a premium subscription anywhere that you are currently at right now, SUBSTACK, Locals, socialredpill.com, YouTube, and X. So, guys, much love, respect. God bless. Take care. Have a great night. Ah, shit, I just did that backwards. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Oh, my God, almost an hour and a half show. Look at that, 90 minutes, people. All right. Good night, guys.
There was a time when our children stood tall, hand on their hearts, one voice for all. There was a time when honor had weight, when the flag was a symbol, not a debate. There was a time when our history was known, with pride in the rules that made us our own. There was a time, respect for the brave, for those who bled, for the lives they gave. Now the homeland burns to silent war. Truth is twisted, we can't ignore. Voice still calls, we the people will not fall. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil under, patriots rise. We are one, land of the free, home of the brave. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time when truth was clear, when the media served, not ruled by fear. There was a time when leaders stood fast, guarding the people, defending the past. Now corruption wears a crown, lies are fed to tear us down. But Q said watch, and Q said see. The silent war will set us free. From the front lines, soldiers stare, wondering if we're still there. There Their blood, their hope, their sacrifice will not be sold for a last price. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, the veil undone. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on. Or we will spend our sunset years telling our children what it was once like in the United States where men were free.
There was a time, the time is near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil undone. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time. There was a time. Now is the time. Do it.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation. I want you to get mad.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
These people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this